What's good? What's good? So, I've been doing a lot of thinking about that old super Southwestern accent came out like some childhood type stuff. I've been doing a lot of thinking. Um, being back here and these woods here and stuff like that. Just like not only like where the next 6 months, 9 months, a year will lead me, what that looks like, what type of success will come from that, what type of failures will come from that. I was like, you know what, maybe I can turn this into a segment. So, with a lot of thought and just prayer, just really trying to understand like how I want this to look. And an idea came up and I said, hey, let's try it. And basically, I decided to come up with more of just a deeper conversation, just to express my thoughts on a variety of different topics I think are interesting, lessons that I've learned, wisdom that I learned those lessons, things like that. And so the idea of the segment came to mind is when you're going through your battles, physically, mentally, and spiritually, trying to get that devil off your back type stuff. I said, what would be the best name for something where you speak the truth? And it hit me. It was just like, call it Tell the Truth, Shame the Devil. So y'all, this is what we gonna start doing. This segment right here, I'm gonna call it Tell the Truth, Shame the Devil. And basically, like I said, I'm gonna speak my mind on certain things. Some people are gonna like what I have to say. Some people may not like what I have to say. If y'all know me personally, I never really cared so much about, trying to appease, people's viewpoints as far as trying to project it on my life is something that I have to take on. I'm my own person, but I do respect people's viewpoints. And this is kind of where this segues into what I want the topic today to be. Like, let's jump into this. Like, what's the best thing to kind of start off a segment when you're telling the truth and you're shaming the devil? What does that look like? And basically, I wanted to talk about what's the concept of wisdom. Like, what is wisdom? Like, what is wisdom in essence? Like, what does it mean to be wise? But like, how can I break it down in like just a general conversation, not getting too wordy, not getting too preachy, but just like from the heart, like what I understand about it, from my personal walk on this earth, my journey, right? And basically, the best way to sum it up to me would be the quote that says that a foolish man does not learn from his mistakes. A wise man learns from his mistakes. A wiser man learns from the mistake of others. It's pretty much the power of listening. Like, it's the power of listening and understanding approach where needed. The secret of wisdom, it's not really just about having personal experiences. Like, everybody said, oh, I got to go through it in order for me to really understand it, to get the wisdom from it, to really pull the essence out of it. And it's not really, you can have personal experiences, obviously, if from the quote, if you learn from them, will grant you that wisdom. But it's not that you necessarily have to have personal experiences. You don't have to jump into the water to almost drown to know that that's probably not a good idea. Like, you don't have to do that. You can save yourself time. There's plenty of, unfortunately, plenty of people who have suffered that fate for you to know that, hey, I can't breathe underwater. I'm not a fish. I don't need to drown myself to experience that phenomenon. I don't have to do that. Right. But so it's not about like personal experiences. It's more about being humble enough to know what your limitations are and to be thankful, for the witness testimonies of other people that you meet along your life's journey, because those testimonies is really what can save you from a whole lot of headache and a whole lot of trauma and a whole lot of trouble. Right. And that's really a big part of why I even thought to make this whole channel. Like, these are certain segments you'll see on this channel. I have other stuff I have going on that I'm going to bring to you. But with this one, it's just a big piece. It's a piece rather of a larger whole. And that is to provide y'all with information coming from my successes. I have many successes. People can, vouch for that. Those who witnessed it. And yes, I have many failures. I'm going through a season right now that is very, like, on the outside looking in, someone looking at it like, oh, this is troubling. I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to have them type issues, but it's all part of the grand scheme of the game called wisdom, if you want to call it like that, like how to, seek wisdom 101, but it's the latter part. I want people to be wiser than me. And the only way that could truly happen, using that quote, is if I can hopefully provide some insight to which you will be able to learn from my mistakes or learn from the mistakes of others that have come before me, or more importantly, just learn from people who've done it well. It's not just the mistakes, the quote is not it doesn't sum up every aspect. Like I said before, there's many ways to gain wisdom. However, the sentiment that it has to be, oh, I have to go through something. I have to experience this. I have to have this in order to, show the world that I'm really about, whatever I'm trying to show the world. It doesn't need to be that. Listen to those who have already dealt with it, so you don't have to run around looking like a crash dummy. Like, you don't have to run around, banging your head against the wall. Like, look at the knot on my head, not physically, but look at it, look at the bruises, look at the scars, and know that, hey, it's real out here. I don't want you to suffer like that. That's just the love I have for people. I don't want people to suffer. And if there's any way, because suffering will come. It's part of life. Some great philosophers, one of them they call the Buddha, says life is suffering. That's not all life is, but, teach his own. But there is suffering in life. So what then would be, because like I said, witness testimony is important, humbling yourself to understand that you don't know everything so you can receive, right, that type of guidance is important. So what exactly are those testimonies? Like, what is that? What does that look like? What's the way of maybe categorizing some of them up? Okay. So there's two types of witness testimony when it comes to not just the original quote that I stated, but just in general with understanding how to wear, I guess, like a badge of honor, the lessons learned from other people, right? So basically you have two types. It's the type that gives advice from personal success, like I said earlier. And it's the type that gives advice from their failures. Now, here's the kicker. It's not always that the failures, or even with the success, to be fair, but just I think the success one is a little bit easier because you see somebody who's successful, right? You will, you want to, emulate that. You want to say, hey, I like what you're doing. I want to be a part of that. I want to be successful too. Yeah, that's the game, right? But a lot of times we don't realize that the latter, or the other statement rather, of learning from people's failures is not that you learn from the failures where they're walking up to you and saying, hey, I failed. This is why I failed. No, it's observing those failures and learning from them without them having to say a word, without them having to say anything. I've watched people do some crazy stuff and I'm like, nah, they didn't have to tell me that, hey, man, don't do this. I saw the results of it. Keyword the results. Because here's the thing. Maybe, possibly, I might have thought that it was a good idea. I might have said, hey, this might be the best thing since sliced bread. That's the way to go about it. I might have thought that. I'm human. I don't know everything. I'm not going to know everything. Contrary to belief in this world, in this life, I'm not going to know everything, right? But I might have seen or heard or felt in my little spirit that, oh, this is the best thing to do, and then saw someone do it, and I'm like, thank God for that person, because now I know that was the worst thing to ever do. And you might learn this from friends, peers, at work, your own family, your parents, your siblings, who, you can learn this from anybody, so just as much as you learn the success of other people by observing them, whether they say anything or not, you see them, it's just like being a child. The child watches and say, okay, you pick up the cup, you pour the water in the cup, you can use that to drink. It's better than trying to scoop it with your hand, right? They saw somebody do it, they emulate it. They emulate it because kids are like sponges. On the same thing, this is the wisdom part. If a kid sees you do something wrong, they're not going to process if it's wrong or not, because maybe they don't know what wrong is at the time. They see you burn your hand on the stove when you jumping up and down. They might think it's funny. They say, oh, let me try it. So this is where the real maturity comes at play. This is where you really kind of break it down from, okay, I'm not just aware that they put their hand on the stove, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that looked like it hurt, man. I don't want to be a part of that, right? So those are two ways to understand how to learn from the mistakes or successes of others, right? And that leads me to a couple of examples that I just want to share. Just at random. Like I said, this is just me just kind of shooting the breeze. I'm out here in the woods. Just got finished doing a little bit of yard work, pulling some peppers, had a couple of green tomatoes, had to pull off the vine. It's cold, things shriveling up. It's the winter time. It feels kind of warm. I'm in the South. I'm in the South, so winter's a little different out here. It's probably going to be 78 degrees. It's late November. Thanksgiving is next week, just to put that in proper time and context. So, but just doing a little bit of work and got some other things to do today. And I'm like, let me take a moment and chop this up. Let me bring this, to light, and maybe this can help and bless somebody. So hopefully it does. So, I like to unbiasedly listen to different types of people. Like, it don't matter if you're a man, woman, child, dog. Dogs not people. You know what I'm saying? I like to, learn, and I have learned from almost anybody. Like, people just say, why would you learn from that person? What that person have to have? Like, what value does that person have in your life for you to learn from them? And you'd be surprised, if you, open up your mind and listen. You just have to have, discernment. And that's the other thing. Sometimes, you should not listen to other people, because you might be too foolish to not know that ain't the right thing to listen to, and might end up doing it. Right. So it's a two-way street. But for me, I have the ability to do that and pull from that information. And so there's two things, that I listen to, and just give an example of with those things, just hearing other people and their experiences. One was from a very successful woman. On this channel, I'm not really going to mention names. This person is they're pretty successful, got a couple of Emmys and things like that in their life. Real big in as a writer, as a producer, did directing. And I was speaking with this person, we crossed paths just randomly, divinely, however you want to put it. And we were talking. And at the time I was in certain film projects. I didn't do film up until that point. I was interested in it, but not like as a career or even a hobby. Well, maybe a hobby at best, but I was doing it a lot more seriously because it involved other business partners and future projects, and I was trying to do a particular merger. That's neither here nor there. But I wanted to get advice in the industry, and at this time I was writing scripts and working on being on set for the first time, like a small set, working with up and coming, young actors and actresses, and I was, soaking it up like a sponge. I like learning new things. The issue was, though, that wasn't my space. This wasn't my field. Like I don't really know. Like a few months ago, I didn't know what was going on. Now I'm like immersed in this, and talking to the cinematographer, and everything like that. And so they came up to a situation where I'm directing. Like I'm doing some directing here. Co-director at best, but director nonetheless. And, although it be small, I'm one of them people, like, I don't want to just say, hey, look, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I ain't one of them type people. If I just feel like maybe there's a certain amount of experience I needed, there's a certain amount of accolades, whatever. And she just told me point blank, she said, if that's what you're doing, that's what you're doing. Stand on it. Like, don't second guess yourself. If you're writing and you're writing a whole bunch of stuff, you're a writer. Don't think, because you say you're a writer, you're going to magically turn into a beanie wearing Starbucks person in the corner looking around and make sure everybody knows that you're writing something. No, I get how certain negative stereotypes, if you want to call it negative stereotypes, some people don't care about that. But, certain stereotypes nonetheless can cause you to think, oh, man, I don't want to be associated with that, or I don't think I'm worthy, or maybe I'm taking a title from somewhere. And she said, no, stand on it. When you walk into a room and you're speaking to certain people in the film industry, you tell them you are a director, because you are. And that stuck with me because it gave me confidence, because this woman, like I said, is very successful, very humble, though, by the way. I mean, humble enough to speak to little old me. But her advice resonated with me, where I need to learn to, stand on the business that I'm working on. If I'm directing, if I'm writing, doing whatever, then that's what I am doing at the time. If you are at a restaurant, and let's say you do other things in life, but at that restaurant you are a server, well, you're a server. You got to move like a server. You got to act like a server. You have to take authority of whatever a server is supposed to take responsibility for. And that goes from any level of hierarchy in what you do in life. So stuff like that, it stuck with me, right? I may speak a little bit more on that conversation. With a lot of jewels that she dropped, but that was just her, putting in me a spirit of confidence, by letting me know, hey, stand on business. Don't, second guess yourself because of what you may think. That's how you sell yourself, but more importantly, how you can move in whatever industry you're trying to move in. The other type of advice when you talk about failures kind of goes back to the crack epidemic of the 80s and 90s. Crack is whack, and don't do drugs. Obviously, the DARE program came out of that. Anybody had to deal with the DARE program, which told you all the drugs you ain't supposed to do so you can do them? No. No, but seriously, like it was that made me think of something through that program, or that them really pushing towards obviously trying to get the cities cleaned up and people not to, lose their lives and livelihoods over this highly addictive, to this day, still insufferable substance, But the thing is, when people would hear, oh, crack is whack, like, yeah, crack is whack. I ain't gonna do no crack, but you're drinking every day. Oh yeah, crack is whack. I ain't gonna do no crack, but you eating yourself into oblivion. Crack is whack. I ain't gonna do that. Yeah, but you can't control yourself. You got to sleep with everybody. Now, some of y'all like, oh, hey, look, man, you ain't got to say it out loud. But the point is, it's understanding what substance abuse is, but more importantly, understanding what idol worship is. Some of y'all fall to the feet of idols and don't even know it. Some of y'all aren't even self-aware that what they're saying is not just that this particular thing is bad, it can ruin your life. There's so many things you can get addicted to in life, and you may not even be aware of it. So I'll say it to you like this. If you meet, an unfortunate individual who's on drugs, whether it be high alcohol usage, whatever, and that person tells you, hey kid, hey, don't do drugs. Don't be like me, man. Don't be sniffing up. Don't do it. Right. And you like, hey, yeah, you like, you ain't gotta tell me twice. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't thinking about doing whatever you doing anyway. Like, I ain't trying to look like you. What you should think of is like, hey, brother, thank you. Thank you for giving me that word. Thank you. And some of y'all like, okay, well, yeah, thank him, I guess. I mean, what for what? He's not just telling you about what got him messed up. He's telling you what could mess you up if you're not careful, thinking that you can be in control of things that will actually control you in the end. It's a deeper message. So you got to look at the deeper message of what people give you. If you dismiss them because you're like, I ain't going to be them and they ain't going to be me, you already missed it. You're going to mess around and be them because there's something else in your life that might be pulling you and messing you up and causing you to fall. And someone's trying to give you a hint like, hey, if you keep doing that, you're going to end up like this. It goes over your head. You'll miss it. It goes over your head. You'll miss it. So it's learning how to be thankful for both testimonies. The ones that you are like, hey, yeah, that's what I want to be. Yeah, I like that one. And the ones like, ooh, thank you, brother. Like, and I hope that you get out of your situation. But thank you, because maybe you showed me to get out of mine. I know some folk who parents were on drugs, and that caused them to not just on that type of drug, but be very cautious of certain substances. With me personally, there, certain people close in my life that, were highly addicted to alcohol. And I had my own struggles later on because, it was a fear in that, with me not understanding the deeper wisdom of what's going on, caused me for a season to fall, not deeply, thankfully. I'm thankful for that, but fall nonetheless into certain temptations. So, you have to be mindful of both levels of witness testimony. So it's not to get too long, because there's other things we could talk about on here, and I have more of these for sure. But the thing is, if you have failures, it's okay. Learn from them though. Repent from them though. And in the same way, you can become the very person who's wiser because maybe it's your mistakes that you learn from. Right? So you learn from them. You can learn from other people. But most importantly, pay attention to those testimonies. Don't dismiss them. It may go over your head one season. The older you get, the more you realize, I think that's what Buddy was trying to tell me. Now I know. So never take for granted what someone tries to bless you with. Even if, you think they're the wrong messenger. That's irrelevant. It's what they're saying, not how they're saying or how they're looking when they said it. So I'm just leaving y'all with that. Y'all stay blessed out here. This is the first episode to Tell the Truth, Shame the Devil. Hopefully many more to come. I love y'all. Y'all take it easy. Peace.